plus school leaders across the country and from 45 other nationalities as well. We usually host sessions for our principals. Yesterday, we had a discussion around national education policy with 300 odd school leaders, but we also regularly do sessions for our teachers, which is IPN member teachers are also invited to be a part of the session. So this is a good mix of teachers and school leaders in this session, because the expert which we have is a very, very distinguished professor from the University of Hebrew. So I thought I should invite all of you. We have had 700 registrations so far, but I'm sure we should get half of them as we go along. Okay. Having said this, as I was mentioning about the national education policy to all of you, and while I say that you should be reading it, one of the integral part of our policy is about the numerical ability of our young children's. So which brought the entire focus eventually brings to the teachers who are concerning maths, or even teachers who are not teaching math, but in the initial formative years, largely maths is a very integral part of our teaching pedagogy, right, as a subject as well, and as a method of deliberation as well, if I may say, right? So in that light, this session becomes all the more important. I would request all of you to do have us questions if you have a relevant question for the session. Your chat window, if you look at it, is enabled. However, I will request to use chat very, very wisely, if I may say. So we are not here to greet each other. We are not here for pleasantries, if I may say. We are here for a very specific purpose, which is a session. So after a formal welcome I have done, let's get into the action. And I will request that only if you have a relevant question pertaining to your subject or the deliberation which is happening, do put it on the chat window for the initial half of it. So broadly, we will be dividing this session into two broad halves, which is the first half is the professor will be taking up his session largely, and then we'll dive into the second half, which is purely on Q&A, which is question and answer, which is obviously your question, and professor will try to answer those questions for us. However, it is humanly impossible to take up all questions, so I will have to filter down those questions to largely relevant questions, and I'm sure there are chances when some teacher asks you a question, in a way your query also gets answered in the same very question. Okay. So I will say, whenever we get a question, or when you see you have to ask a question, ensure that that's not been already asked. If it's already been asked, there's no point repeating that question. Okay. In the course of the session, it will be slightly difficult to unmute and mute, for that matter, for any question or for scenario. So hence I have muted all of you right now. If you see that maybe you will be unable to mute yourself, but as we go to the Q&A section, I'll try to enable you with the power that you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay. So that's the way we will flow out on this session. Largely, we will keep it maximum on 1 hour plus 15 minutes on the upper side, if I may say. And if we do not have many questions, we largely try to wind this up in the next 60 odd minutes. Okay. So please settle down, place yourself in the right place in your house. There is less of a disturbance. And we are good to go. In the next 1 minute, we'll start the session for all of you. Okay. As I have requested, I please do not put any good afternoons on the chat window. We all know this is good afternoon in India. So thank you very much for your good afternoons. As I said, you know what happens with those good afternoons, the relevant matter misses out. When you have to put a relevant context there, then I only see good afternoons there and I miss out on the main question. So my request is no pleasantries, as I mentioned. I may sound harsh, but trust me, that is for all our benefit. And that's the way it should be. And don't worry, I know my drill very well because I've been doing this for the past 4.5 years, so I know how it really rolls out. Okay, so you'll bank upon my experience on that front, that how it really moves, and I know that it is difficult to run a class of more than 40 people, which is in this case almost 200 now. So I'm a fairly, if I may say, what should be the right word? I am a hyper teacher. Is that, that's not the right word. I'm possibly alpha teacher in a way, because it's a maths class. So nevertheless, you guys are wonderful. So far, so good. Professor, we are good to go. If I can request you to unmute yourself, please. Yeah, you look sharp as usual, and formal welcome to you, sir. Good to have you with us. And over to you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, first, I must say, a year ago, I was in Delhi meeting a few hundreds of educators and school principals. And 2 months later, I was in Bangalore for a big education forum meeting.
Okay.
And it is so unfortunate that we have to meet via teleconferencing nowadays. And I really hope that this catastrophic situation will be behind us soon enough. I don't think one can open without starting with saying that. So I wish all of you in India health. That's the most important thing I can say. So, do you hear me?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
loud and clear. Yes.
Okay, great. So I want to say a few words about myself, okay, before I start to talk about the main content of this lecture. So as I was presented, I'm a professor of mathematics. I'm teaching and doing research in mathematics at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I've been holding this position for 22 years now. It's a lot of time. And somewhere about 17 years ago, when my children, I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, started to attend school, I became very deeply interested in education, education in general, but of course, being a mathematician, math education had a special place, and I became quite active, both on a local level and national level. In math education, and somehow about 8 years ago, I was one of the co-founders of Matific. I understand that most of all of you have already been introduced to some extent to Matific, and if not anyway, in a moment. So that's my background, doing mathematics, but with a very, very deep interest in how mathematics is being taught from very young age, all the way to university teaching of mathematics. So I will share my screen now. I hope everything will be
sure. Please go ahead. Yeah.
All right. All right. So I'm going to talk about both challenges and opportunity in math education, and just to be sure that we all know what I'm talking about, being the chief scientist of Matific, I want to say a few words about Matific. So what is Matific? Matific is a digital platform offering about 1,500 interactive activities, all concerned with primary school mathematics. So if every country, the school system is organized differently, we're talking about ages 5 to 12, basically. So those activities are fully aligned, I can say, with the Indian curriculum, or I'm sorry, probably there isn't such thing, but with local Indian curricula. This all content is organized, cataloged in a way that makes it very easy to align with every curriculum. We've had a lot of countries in which curricula were rewritten, and it was absolutely no problem to realign everything with local practice.
Professor, we lost you.
There has been quite significant research about the impact of you lost me. That's not good.
Yeah. No, you're back now. You're back now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I should probably apologize that the internet is also not very reliable. Anyway, I was saying that there has been substantial research showing the impact of using Matific, and of course in terms of standard tests, but also in terms of the attitudes both of children and teachers to learning mathematics, making it much more friendly, accessible, and something they like to do. Matific is highly personalized and adaptive. I will probably say more about that later on, but the idea is that children, they can follow their learning path both automatically or directed by teachers, depending on the choice of the teachers. There are a lot of additional resources for teachers, which are not the games themselves or the activities themselves that are more for children, like teacher guides, teaching tips of all kinds, and all kind of also additional infographics and a lot of material for teachers. Reporting, Matific has also an extensive reporting system that goes all levels. From a teacher can see, of course, every individual student. They can partition their classes into groups and see how a group performs, the whole class performs, the whole school performs. So that's very important because of different levels of supervision, of course, right? Principal would probably want to see a partition of performance by class, but the district manager would like to see how schools perform, and so on. Matific works on all platforms. So on a browser, on a computer, on a tablet, of all kinds of tablets, all phones, and the mobile, so the tablets and the phones work also offline, which is extremely important in areas with poor or no connectivity at all. So all the content of Matific can be downloaded ahead of time on mobiles, so that children can use Matific even without connection. Connection will be
Yeah, we lost you again.
in more. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we lost you again for a while. Yeah, never mind.
How long? How long?
Almost like 3, 4, 5 seconds largely. Yeah.
Oh, seconds. Okay, if it's seconds, not minutes, then everything's
Not
okay.
minutes, not minutes.
I see. Okay, if it happens again, I will just turn on my hotspot on my phone, and hopefully we'll be okay. So I was finally saying that Matific is present in more than 60 countries, in about 50 different languages, and including in India. Matific has been present in Tamil Nadu, for example, for a while, being tested there with tens of thousands of children. I will talk in a moment about our vision in general, but yes, we want to get to every child everywhere around the world, independently of local resources. So yes, the next thing I want to talk about, something very, very important to me, the reason why I entered this enterprise of founding Matific. There's an educational and social vision behind that, which I want to describe. So I'm a mathematician, and for me, mathematics, above all, is not about solving equations or doing arithmetic. It's really an intellectual experience, and I want to bring this excitement, the playfulness of the intellectual experience to children. I want children to understand mathematics, again, not as a sequence of procedures that they have to run in order to please a teacher or a parent, but it's really the art of discovering things and applying then the discoveries both in real life and fictional settings. I want that every child will get a sense of capability and that's something achievable, okay? Children are by nature curious, they like to play, and with the right approach, one can, rather than create a sense of anxiety for mathematics, one can actually, and we've seen that all over the world, get children into an attitude of no problem is too hard for me. When they play, they have that, right? They use their phones, they play some tough game where they lose lives every second, and still they have a feeling that they can improve, and by the end of the day, they will master the task. critical thinking is something important, and again, it goes way far beyond mathematics itself. I think it's socially very important to have critical thinkers. And finally, what I was saying earlier, we want to bring high-level mathematics everywhere around the world. Even, or I would not say even, but in particular to places where low income, lack of resources. I think it's very important to make change in order to make change in children's future. So these were the Matific Vision, something which I very strongly believe in and leads us every day in what we do. But the question, of course, is how to achieve that. And I'm going to talk today about pedagogy. And most of my lecture will not be reading slides with bullets, but I will just show examples of activities we created in Matific. And each example will highlight a pedagogical principle we're trying to achieve. So I would roughly say that we have two main pillars, quote unquote, in all our activities. One of them is the pedagogy. There's something, knowledge or skill we want children to acquire. And then the question of, okay, how to achieve that. And the other pillar is engagement. All right, engagement not as something cheap, but as something deep that children really want to do problem solving in mathematics because it's challenging, fun, and I would say resonates with their natural curiosity. So I will start by talk about something I would call it a pedagogical principle, aiming for conceptual understanding. And as I promised, everything will be by example. So conceptual understanding concepts rather than following procedures is something really critical, both in terms to really understand mathematics, but also in having the right attitude. And that's something that everyone agrees with, okay? If you look at all the international standards, and only a few minutes ago, we were talking before the meeting started about the PISA tests, you read the standards, and you see everywhere that, you know, everyone, all the experts are talking about the need to have less emphasis on procedures and much more emphasis on principles and strategic thinking and critical thinking. But yet, if you look at most resources, and when I say resources, could be classical textbooks, but could also be very recent edtech solutions. They all tend to overemphasize procedures and do very little about teaching principles. So example, and as an example, I'll take something which probably fits in most countries, the first grade curriculum, and that's the distinction between odd and even numbers. So parity, odd or even, which except for being taught at a young age, is also preparation to the future understanding of the notion of divisibility, because odd and even is division by 2, right? You have 2 possibilities in terms of remainder, which could be 0 or 1, but it's a preparation to something more complex later on. And here is a question: what is an even number? So I could give you 3 different answers to that. The first is that an even number is a number that sums 2 equal wholes. So for example, I would say that 6 is even because it's 3 plus 3. So it's the sum of 2 equal wholes. But I could also say that a number is even if it's summing a collection of pairs, right? So in this context, I would say that 6 is even because it's 2 plus 2 plus 2. And the third answer would be that a number is even if its last digit is 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. Now, I gave here 3 answers, and I want to say that the first 2 are really the essence of parity. Okay, these are 2 different explanations to what it means to be even, but both of them are the essence of parity, just 2 aspects of it. Whereas the third answers about the last digits, just check the last digits, it's something completely procedural. It's correct, of course, but it has nothing to do with the meaning of parity, of being even. Now, if you examine just, open a random book, probably of grade 1, or just browse on the internet, odd, even, ed text, something, what you're likely to get is something like that. Okay, you will have in some textbooks pages and pages, and then the numbers will evolve, become larger numbers, some kind of multiple choice. You have a bunch of numbers like 5, 10, 2, and 6, and you have to number or circle or color those that are even. And that's exactly training children to pure procedures, okay? I'm sorry to say that there's almost, from my point of view, at least as a mathematician, there's almost no learning behind that, okay? You're just training to something very, very technical that has no relation whatsoever about the essence of being odd or even. So what would be an alternative, and what would be Matific's approach to an activity for 6-year-old children about odd and even numbers or quantities? So let me show you a Matific activity. I will click this, which will open a browser, and hopefully I'll be able to navigate between the two and get back. So I thought I pressed something. Wait, let's go back here. Okay, yes. So what you see here is a Matific activity, as I said, for children. And the child has to answer the following question: is the number of birds odd or even? Now, of course, you could count, right? You could 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Aha, 8 ends with an 8. So according to the procedure, it's even. But that's, of course, not the point. And actually, we don't really want even children to count here or anything, because the whole idea is that you can always manipulate things, move things around, and figure out for yourself, according to the meaning of odd and even. So in this example, I could, for example, start to move birds around and discover here that I rearranged the birds as a bunch of pairs, so it must be even, or I could do it differently this way, and then discover that I rearranged the birds as 2 equal quantities, which would be the other meaning of being even. All right, so that's an example, answer even. Star, success, the birds flew out, and I would have a new formation of birds. So I just want to remind you, okay, that the audience here is 6-year-old children, all right? Now, and then I have a new formation, which is quite similar in a sense, right, to the previous one. It's not the same number, okay, and that's one of the things that you're learning. Right. The idea here is that at some point the child, just by looking at it, should have the notion that aha, it's even, okay, because I can rearrange it in a way where I have pairs, right? And by the way, it shows you that certain arrangements, when you're used to look at them, you don't have to count, because again, it looks very similar to the previous one, but from the point of view of the uninitiated child, it's different. The quantity is different, right? It was 8 and now it's 12. It's totally different. And yet there's something which is the same. And that's what exactly we want the child to understand, this idea of sameness, which is just because of the structure and not on the number. Okay, and then so the answer is even. Later on, by the way, I will show you what happens when I make errors. Okay, it will be an important part of the lecture, talking about making errors. All right, and then I have some new arrangement and so on, and it becomes much more complex as it goes. You have interesting formations of birds, but I will go back now because we have many more examples to look at. So go back here. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is engagement, which, as I remind you, it's one of our main pillars. And I want to explain what's different in Matific, because every resource, EdTech resource you will come up with will tell you that we're engaging. But I want to talk about the essence of engagement because I think it's very, very important. So first, why engagement? So psychologists and child educators talk so much about math anxiety. the effects of learning mathematics and being tested in mathematics causing major anxiety on children in all ages. It's just amazing how 6, 7-year-old children can already feel anxious about mathematics, okay, because their parents put pressure on them, I don't know, the environment, if you're not good at math, you're stupid and things like that, which are very unfortunate from my point of view, and I certainly don't believe in them. So there's a lot of attempts to reduce math anxiety. And what I want to claim is that many of those attempts turn out actually to be counterproductive. So basically what I see around, I think, is 2 types of reaction. And the first one is overprotection. And I've seen that a lot. I've worked a lot. I didn't tell you anything about my background in education. I've worked a lot with teachers, and I've always seen a fear of challenging the students, because if it's hard, they will be frustrated, and they will not want to continue or a thing like that. And that's what I would call overprotection. And I think that by overprotecting children, we're sending a very negative message, basically saying you're just not smart enough, so we'll only give you easy stuff. And the other kind of reaction I see is something I would call sugar coating, trying to make things nice, sweet, and I will claim in a moment that what we do is also nice and sweet. But the question is, how do you do that? Because if you do it just as sugar coating, I think here the message you're transmitting to the children is that math is boring. So the fun will come not from the math, but from the envelope of what, not the activity itself, but the stars you may be collecting, or I don't know, a meta game, and not the mathematics itself. So what I want to say is that when we approach mathematics in Matific, we're always, so we put a lot of emphasis on engagement, on fun, on playfulness, but it's always in context. It's not the envelope, it's the math itself, which is made fun, okay? We don't want the user experience to overshadow the content, the pedagogy. So, and again, I want to show examples, right? So the example here will be, again, from a low grade activity. So one of the skills that children are expected to master at some point is to use a number line model to do arithmetics like addition and subtraction. So I just gave you here an example coming from addition and subtraction in the range of 20. So you would have a question like, how much is 4 plus 2? And you're expected to place your pen, in my case, my mouse, on 4, jump forward 2 steps. I reach 6, so the answer is 6, and 3 plus 1. I put my pencil on 3. I jump 1 step, I reach 4, and so on. By the way, I don't want to criticize this activity. It's also something I think children should do. But what I want to show you here is how you can actually make a game, which in terms of teaching you the skills, does the job very well. And from the point of view of the child, it's fun. So the activity is the following. Let me open it. So what's the game here? What do we see on the screen? So we see a crystal ball, which if I drop it by pressing go, it will break, which is not good. And what I have a net here, and the goal is to bring the ball into the net. And I have springs I can use to this purpose, which I can place on this rail. All right, and the spring here tells me that if the ball bounces, it will bounce 5 holes forward. So if I put the spring here, this is what will happen. Okay, that was easy, right? There was only one spring, there was very little to do, but of course in the next problem I'm going to get many more springs, some will jump forward and backward. And now, from the point of view of the child, it's a game, right? There's a goal here to not bring the crystal ball to the net without breaking it on the way, without making too many errors on the way, otherwise something like that. Right, in this I could, for example, put the 5 string here, which will jump from 2 to 7, and then the 1 back here. By the way, I also do this, right? Go back 1 and 5 forward, it would also be a solution. And what I would like to bring your attention to is that if you look at this game, and it's a game, what's going on here is addition and subtraction on a number line, right? The rail is a kind of physical model of a number line, and with the numbers replacing the notches on the number line, and those strings are arithmetic operation of addition and subtraction. So looking at it as from the point of view of a mathematician or a teacher, I see a child here doing addition and subtraction on a number line. Whereas from the point of view of the child, there's no question of is that addition, subtraction, where am I in the curriculum? The child plays, okay? And through the game, the child acquire the understanding and the skills we want them to. So let me move now to the next example. So a few words about what I would call natural mathematics. So a big complaint we are hearing is that children feel that mathematics has nothing to do with their lives. It's not useful. Every time you tell a child that if you don't do math, you won't be able to buy the groceries, the children understand that it's a lie. You can put in your basket whatever you want and pay with your credit card, and it works. So that's not the deep reason why you need to learn mathematics to go to the groceries. And something very important here is really to bring mathematics to the children in a way that's interesting for them and related to their personal lives. And personal lives doesn't mean to the grocery. It could mean, for example, as before, playing is part of their lives. So what we do is trying to bring mathematics into real life settings. So constructing activities where there's something natural there. And once again, I don't want to talk too much and show you an example, which now comes from a higher grade and has to do with fractions. So what's the setting of this game? It's kind of cooking or baking shows that you have sometimes on TV, right? Welcome to the popular TV show, Bake It. All right, so you have a recipe. I'll go through the activity, but of course, from the point of view of the child, it's part of the whole fun, right? And you're supposed to check if you're missing something, I don't know, like oats. So our counter, okay, yeah, no oats, let's complete the dish. And by the end of the day, the activity here is that you have a recipe where for one serving, you need a third of a cup of oats, and you have a measuring spoon of a third of a cup, and you're supposed to put the right quantity of oats to create 4 servings. So what you're doing is operations, again, which are definitely real-life operations if you're trying to cook something. Yeah, sometimes we remind you, actually, there's an operation, right, that you took 4 times a third of a spoon, which is 4 thirds, which is cups, 1 cup and a third. But again, the activity and you're cooking and so on, and you end up having your 4 servings of oat and so on. All right, let me go to the next item. The next thing I want to mention is learning by doing. So there's a saying attributed to Confucius, which is, I don't know if he actually said it. What I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. And what I do, I understand. So what I can certainly tell you, regardless of Confucius, is that there's a lot of research in education and child psychology proving actually something that we would all expect, that any active hands-on learning is way, way, way more effective than passive learning, by which we could be listening. either to a teacher or to a video. Which brings us to how to construct activities that are based on hands-on doing. And the example here would come from the field of geometry. A part of the primary school curriculum in geometry is based on the classification of shapes, right? So you have, for example, quadrilaterals, and you learn about squares and rectangles and parallelograms and trapezoids and so on. And you're supposed, seeing a shape, to know what are its attributes and to which group does it belong. So in this example, you see here a standard textbook or worksheet or digital worksheet, a question, multiple choice. You have this shape, and you're supposed to identify that it belongs to the family of the quadrilaterals because it has 4 sides. It's not a square. It's not a rhombus because a rhombus has all sides of the same length, but it's a rectangle also, right? So that's something, again, I'm not criticizing this particular question. It's something I would like children, of course, to be able to answer. But the question is how to build the learning practice in a way which is much more active. And that's exactly what I want to show you here. What we have a set of activities in which you really have a kind of laboratory, I would say, which are shapes and scissors and glue. And what you have to do is to construct a shape. So of course, if I tell you to construct a parallelogram, for example, you need to understand what it is. And that's, constructing a parallelogram would be so much more effective than identifying the parallelogram in terms of understanding what it means. So let's go to the activity, okay? Again, just, so first activity, you only have scissors and you have this pentagon, and you're required to create a trapezoid and a triangle out of it, okay? And you have scissors, it's all you do, so children would start to move them around and see what you could do is that, okay, you could do all kind of cuts and right, which is not what I was asked to do, so let's rewind back. So I was asked to create a trapezoid and a triangle, which I did now. And again, everything is always draggable and you can rotate things around, whether you need or not, okay? Because we give you a lab and we want you to use your hands and your brain and actually do things. And the next question, let's see what it is.
Make 2 trapezoids and 1 rectangle. Okay. Use all shapes.
2 trapezoids and a rectangle. Okay, so again, you need to understand what those things are. By the way, I can always click the word trapezoid here. No, I think I should. Okay. On the production,
make 1 trapezoid.
On the site,
use
by
all
the
shapes.
way, sorry, on the site, if I click the word trapezoid, here it's a demo of what I'm showing here. You'd actually have an explanation what it is. Okay, so if the child doesn't know what it is, right? So here I have glue, for example, and I'm required to create a trapezoid. So that's the kind of thing I need to do for that, and then use the glue. And it should be said that as we proceed, the question will become much more involved. And at some point, I have both scissors and glue, and it becomes quite a challenge to take the shapes that are given and create the new shapes I'm required to create. But again, the point I want to make is that the skill of identifying shapes will be achieved here, but through an active learning procedure. Okay, that's the essence of what I'm trying to show. The next point, okay, we have 10 minutes. I want to talk about problem solving. So I would say that problem-solving skills are the heart of mathematics, because we learn mathematics not in order to repeat what we've just learned. We're learning mathematics in order to be able to apply what we've learned into new contexts and new problems. All right, I mean, you teach mathematics so that if a child later on goes and learns engineering or physics or social sciences or whatever, they will be able to apply their skills into the new context. So again, open all the international standards and they will tell you problem solving is a central task in math education. But the problem is that it's very difficult to teach problem solving. It requires very, very sophisticated teachers with very specific skills of being able to work with a class on problem solving. And also, I was talking earlier about the dilemma that so many teachers have. They're afraid of challenging their students. So what we do at Matific basically is most of our activities, I would say, engage students into significant, sometimes very, very challenging problem solving, but in a way which is friendly, and it makes them comfortable to explore, experiment, make errors, which is so important in doing mathematics. And I will again show an example, and the example is from much more advanced. It's from, I would say, algebra. So there's always an introduction, right? Because the child has to be introduced into some environments. What's the story here? Okay, we're having this monkey. So there's a ring that we want to steal, but if we just take it, it will unequilibrate the balance scale, and then the gorilla will wake up, and we will not be able to do it. So what we're doing, I don't know if you remember the movie of Indiana Jones. There's in one of the movies, he's actually stealing something by putting the exact same weight instead of the treasure. What you can do, you can move to another screen and discover that one yellow is like two hearts. And now you can go back and give the monkey two hearts and tell the monkey to switch the two hearts with the ring. So the balance remains okay. The gorilla does not wake up, and we got the ring. And now you have many, many, many new questions of that type becoming more and more complex. Now, mathematically, what you're doing is actually quite advanced algebra. You're really solving algebraic questions, okay? Because think now not in terms of rings and shapes, but think of X, Y, and Z if you wish. The question is how much, right? You want the ring. So how much is this blue shape, where you know that the blue shape is like one purple and two red, and two reds are like one purple. And now you can start to do algebra, right? You can, for example, once I see that this purple is like two reds, I can ask this monkey to replace the purple by two reds. And now I see that the blue is four reds, so I can go back and hand the monkey, the thief, four hearts, red hearts, and tell him to switch. And I succeeded, okay? And we can do it for hours. The questions become really complicated. But the thing I want to say, it's complex algebra, but from the point of view of a child, a fifth grader, a sixth grader, they're really playing a challenging game, which is fun to play, right? You're stealing a ring again and again while doing complex algebra that if you just presented it as an equation would be intimidating and also too early. And part of the idea, probably it's the next point I want to mention, is that through games you can prepare children ahead of time to something which later on will come as, for example, in this case, solving equations. The next point I want to talk is exactly the last thing I was referring to, something I call seeding ahead. So laying down foundations of something which will be necessary later on. Hello, sorry.
Can you okay. Yeah, no worries. Go ahead, Professor. Yeah.
Yes. So, okay, yeah, I'm just trying to. Okay, so sorry, I go back here. So one of the reasons I attribute to anxiety is that children very often get to a new subject when they don't have the preparation for it. Okay. And as a result, when they feel uncertain, they adopt what many call a survival mode. I don't want to understand. Just tell me how it works. I will try to do it, but no explanation. Just tell me how, which of course is harmful. And eventually, sooner or later, they get to a point where they can't the survival mode is not effective anymore. And then that's when they have a feeling that, there's no ground under their feet. So one of the things we do is, again, laying down foundations sometimes a few years before they're needed. And the example I'm going to show here comes from doing arithmetics with negative numbers. In my country, it's something that's being taught at grade 7. And we constructed an activity for grade 3, okay, which totally acceptable in terms of what it does at this stage, a lot of fun for children. And later on, when they will get to doing negative number arithmetic and trying to remember that minus is plus and things like that, they will have a very concrete prior experience that will make everything so much easier. So what's the story of this activity? There's this hotel built on a cliff. So the entrance is ground 0, and then you can go up to the positive floors and down to the negative floors. And the child, the player, is this bellboy who is supposed, there's no elevator today, and you're supposed to help providing service to the guests, okay? And so you have, right, he gets a phone call, I think, yeah, or an announcement that he has to go to floor -12 because he has to provide lunch. And the question in this case is how many floors down you have to go. The answer is 12 because there's 0, you have to go to -12. Okay, and you see this whole setting. So again, we had this example with the number line earlier on. It's also a kind of number line, vertical, right? Where you really understand the positive, the negative, the distances. So here, see the next question. You're at -12, you have to go to floor 8. And the question is how many floors up you have to go. At grade 7, it would be writing an equation, right? 8 minus -12, and you have to know that the minus is plus, so 20. In this case, it's completely concrete, right? You go up 12, you get back to the ground floor, and then you have to go 8 floors more, so it has to be 20. And if you answer a wrong answer, like 18, for example, we won't just tell you, hey, you're wrong. You will actually go up 18 floors and see where you get. And you see, aha, I had to go to 8 and I'm only at 6, so it should have been 2 more. All right, so again, hands-on, concrete, and in this case, the point I wanted to make is preparation for the future. And the last thing I want to talk about is the feedback, okay? And you cannot learn anything, and certainly not mathematics, without making errors. And the key question is, how do you respond to errors? So of course, the one thing is, don't be threatening, give positive feedback, things like that. But it's not enough, okay? The Matific way, first, I think a very strong message, making an error is not failure. It's a natural part of trying to solve a problem. Be accountable for your errors. You could have seen that with the hotel a moment ago. I answered 18 and not 20. I want to see what happens and understand what was wrong, not just being told, wrong answer, try again. And finally, we want the feedback to be as informative as possible and as related as possible to the error you actually did. And that will be the last example. Also, my time is over, I see. So it's the end of show. It's the end of year show that you have to help here the choreographer to organize the show. And I'll just show very quickly because my time I think is over. You have to place dancers so that, let's see what's the task here, so that they can dance in groups of 2. Okay, so I'll just quickly show what happens if I put an odd number of dancers. What will happen? They will be in groups of 2. And one of them will cry because he's alone. Okay, so I was talking about accountability. I made an error. I want to see what happens. So this activity becomes much more complex than, okay, and I get feedback, right? That a group of 5 dancers cannot be divided in groups of 2. Try making a group with a different number of dancers. So it's feedback which is directly, what I would like the machine to do is to be as close as possible to a good teacher would give first an encouraging feedback, but also informative feedback. And with this, I will end here. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be more than pleased to answer any question you may have.
Thank you, Professor. I think very, very interesting. Even given I am father to two young daughters, they are usually on Matific mostly when they are on their tabs, if I may say. That's my validation to it. And not that they were using it far before where we got an association with Matific, if I may say. Thank you very much. I think very interesting way of teaching, and I wish in my times this is would have been the way, and I would have loved mathematics. Nevertheless, I still love mathematics, but I would say I would have done far better if these were the methods given to us. I open the house for the Q&A largely, and if you have a question, ladies and gentlemen, you will have to put a quick show of hand, which I'm sure you're aware how can we do that. A quick show of hand means which if you look at on your right, you will get a show of hand option. Otherwise, if you're not able to show of option, you can also create, at the bottom of your stripe in your network of Zoom, you can get, say example, a thumbs up or a reaction window you can create for that matter, okay? However, I'm sure most of you have been using Zoom, so this should be fairly easy for you to access. Nevertheless, before I go there, let me, this is Dalbir Singh Bhullarji. Unmute yourself and ask the question. Then I come to Neha Garg.
Thank you, Mr. Gaul, and thank you again, as you have been doing, like there's no use telling it again.
Most welcome, Dalbirji, most welcome.
And to Professor Saab, now like it has been very, what you call, very informative to know that we can teach math like this also. My question is, whether language could be a bar, like, you know, the schools situated in rural areas and, you know, the regional language, it will be interfering with learning these kind of methods because all the instructions are coming in English only. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I was saying something about wanting to reach every child everywhere in the world. And we are more than aware that not every child speaks English, or of course not, and even if they do, not necessarily to the level, it's not the language of learning. Matific is being translated to every language where it works, including in India. Matific works in Tamil, and I think at least one more local language in India. And the moment where we have a presence in the country, the first thing we do is first alignment with the curriculum, and secondly, translation of everything, both for the children and the teachers.
Thank you, sir. That's really good to know.
Wonderful, wonderful. Swati Gandhi, your question?
So my question is, if we want to explain the concept of decimal to the students, is there any game related to that particular topic in Matific?
So if you remember my first slide, I was talking about 1,500 activities, and I think I showed you about 6. So every major, I'm a careful person, so I was hesitating about saying that every possible subject in math curriculum would be there. It's probably correct, but I would certainly say that every important, significant subject is covered by many activities on, starting from the beginning of concretely understanding the case of your question, what's a decimal, how you disassemble one whole into 10 tenths and then a tenth into 10 hundredths, and how you form decimals from those, getting all the way through the arithmetic of it and to applications and problem solving. Absolutely, yes. We cover the entire primary school curriculum, and when I say cover, it's not just just for the check having one activity, but really having full coverage of everything it takes to teach a subject.
Thank you so much, sir.
Neha Rajput, your question, ma'am.
Yes, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you and Professor. It was wonderful session. We got to know very innovative ideas. My question is, how can we use this app? Is it an app available on Play Store?
Okay,
Or
so sorry,
Okay,
yes,
so
sorry. I
we
apologize for interrupting. Yes.
pay some amount, sir? Is it something?
okay, so I'll take up that question, Professor, on your behalf, because I think
Yes.
that will trick you as a professor as well. So the answer is very simple. We at IPN have partnered with Matific Neha. So for the first 60 days, you'll get, I think, in whatever format that is available, either on the app or on the browser, that will be first 60 days will be free of cost for you. So we'll send you the details alongside.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to clarify you, the first part of your question, it's both. So it runs on a browser. If you're on a computer, it could be a desktop or a laptop, and it's an app. If it's a tablet, which could be any kind of tablet or any kind of phone, of smartphone. So when I was talking about running offline, that was for the app. If it's browser-based, then you have to be online.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
My
Pranoy
pleasure.
Samson, your question. Pranoy Samson, you're unmuted. Please go ahead. I'll move on. Manju, your question. Miss Manju, you can.
Yeah,
unmute.
happy day to all. Happy day to all. This is, I think, my second Matific session. Again, it was very amazing. I just have one question to the professor that does this gamification would lead to overstimulation or gameplay addiction for the students?
Sorry, did you ask about yes.
Because because math being a serious subject.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I'm not sure I understood the essence of it.
Yeah, let me just revisit. I'm saying math being such a serious subject, will this gamification lead to overstimulation or gameplay addiction among the students?
Okay, thank you for the question. It's a great question. So I really thank you for that. I want to say several things, okay? First, I'm a professor in mathematics, okay? I've been doing mathematics for about 30 years now, first as a graduate student and then as a professor. Mathematics for mathematicians and scientists, I would not call it a game, but I would say it's playful, okay? It's something playful. So playfulness, from my point of view, is not something limited, to children and games. It's something about the attitude of taking a problem, moving things around, okay? It's about creativity. So the creativity and the playfulness in mathematics is something I would really like to preserve all along, even with my students at the university, the most, well, you call it serious, right? It's very serious, right? Doing a degree in mathematics at the university. And still, when we do mathematics, there's something very, very creative about doing it. And that's something that has to remain at all levels. Now, the question, the gorilla and whatever, the mixing and so on, that's something that has to be adapted to the right age, right? If you take our activities from age 5 to age 12, you will see an evolution, right? Because, so no, the idea is not to create children addicted to something. The idea, and by the way, I mean, our activities are really sometimes very difficult, okay? It's an effort, right? So it's certainly not a cheap game. It's not Angry Birds, okay, or anything like that. Not at all. It's deep mathematical activities in a way that's adapted to the right age group. And and again, we have 1,500 activities. You can look at all of them and see the evolution of the playfulness along the ages.
So what I understand, the complexity level keeps on increasing, right?
Absolutely. And something which I did not mention is that the same activity would also exist at different levels of sophistication, which is something which allows a teacher to run a multi-abled class. So, something I've seen a lot visiting schools is that you have different groups, those are lagging behind, those advanced, and every group does something different. With Matific, very often you can have everyone do something which looks the same, but adapted to every child at the right level. So yeah, it definitely grows in complexity as you proceed.
Thanks a lot.
Mr. Ghosh, if you can unmute yourself, your first name is Paltu, right? Please go ahead.
Sir, good evening, Gaurav sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Professor. Actually, sir, I want to know if there is any...
How do you pronounce your name firstly?
Yes, my name is Paltu Ghosh.
Paltu Ghosh.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, is there any activity for senior students means on algebra or something like this? I just saw addition or just on the figure. If there is any activity on algebra or something, I'd like to know.
So, all right. So, as I said, we currently are aiming at primary school. Okay.
Primary school. Okay.
And right. So we do have. By the way, in several countries, they use Matific in secondary school for students who don't have the good foundations. Okay, because the example with the monkey was an excellent example of actually doing algebra in a way which is much more concrete, hands-on, and helps a lot children who have difficulties with the more abstract way of doing algebra and understanding what they're doing before going back
Yes,
to
sir,
ING, okay? But in terms of coverage of covering curricula, we certainly don't claim to cover higher grades. Right now we're a resource for primary school.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Madhuri Chatterjee, your question, ma'am. Madhuri Chatterjee, please go ahead. Okay. Any other question? Because I think Miss Madhuri, either her audio piece is not working. Any other question?
I see a lot of raised hands on my screen.
Yeah. No, those are the questions which are already taken up. We've taken up those questions. I have not lowered those hands. So, Javed, Javed, you have a question?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Sir, actually, I'm feeling a problem in my class. For example, if I'm teaching grade 6 students, there are some students who are lagging even grade 4 mathematics. So for those students, what would be the suggestion how to cope up with those students, how to take them to that level so that that can be easy for them to understand grade 6 as well? Yeah, so there are basically two ways I would say, for a teacher to use Matific. The first is just personalized assignment, okay? A teacher has full control on what activities every boy or girl in their class gets. So you could, as a teacher, if you think that your student has a particular problem, I don't know, like in the times table, and because of that they cannot do multiplication of larger numbers, you can actually construct for them a learning path which is adapted. But in many cases, teachers just don't have the time and energy and sometimes skill to do that. So Matific has an automatic personalized learning path in which, depending on the, once the system understands where your difficulties are, so by default, it brings you to the skills that are prerequisites. Matific is used a lot in many places exactly for the purpose of going back. By the way, I don't know how it works in India, but in many countries, there are one-to-one sessions of teachers with lagging students. And again, Matific is a very successful tool for those sessions as well. Precisely because it has the whole program from kindergarten to grade 6, and you can really construct a personalized path for every child. Right, sir. Actually, sir, I am using some remedial steps for those. I am taking some extra classes for those who are a bit behind the others, so that I can make them understand the basics of mathematics and then they can cope up with their present syllabus or their curriculum will be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and here again, the engagement is so important because you could, you know, remember, you just need a smartphone, right, to play Matific. So we've seen that again in many places. You know, not every child, of course, around the world has a tablet. Of course not. But we've seen a lot of children who actually, you know, in their afternoon, away from school, I don't know, grab their parent smartphone and so on, and do extra activities assigned by teachers, and that's definitely a great way to close gaps.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you,
Sure,
Javed.
thank you.
Any other question?
No,
Preeti
sir. No,
Rani?
not any question from my side.
Go ahead.
I enjoyed the session very much.
Most welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir.
Well, greetings, Gaurav sir, and greetings, Professor sir. It was a very nice session, very informative rather. But the basic problem which we face in elementary school, I mean in primary level, is regarding the tables. I mean, it's very difficult for our teachers to make, it's very easy to explain them how the tables of 2, table of 3 and so on has occurred actually. But the problem in students is by learning. I mean, we cannot tell them to rote learning of tables, but keep on revising and you will be able to learn. That is not, that is something like we have to tell them ki mug up the tables. We don't want that. We teach in a very effective way of tables. We introduce them also in a very nice way. But major problem which we face is they don't memorize tables properly. So is there an easy way for memorizing things? Is there any activity for that, like which they can practice on a daily basis so that they don't face, because once the tables are not found, and you know it, in mathematics all other operations are, I mean in higher classes when they go, they face this problem because the basic is lacking. So just the I hope the question is clear, sir.
Sure, absolutely. I have a lot to say about it.
Yes, sir.
The first thing I want to say is that learning, you know, swimming has nothing to do with mathematics. Some children, you can throw them into the water at the age of 3 or 4 and they swim like dolphins, and others are afraid at the age of 10 to even dip their head into the water, right?
Yes.
And you know, every child, but eventually most people learn how to swim. And it's a little like that with the times table. Some children, you just, you know, once revise 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and so on, and then they remember it and they see the structure. And for others, it will take for ages to remember that 7 times 8 equals 56, right? So part of that, there's not much to do, and it has to do with the children, you know, just growing and evolving, and every child at their own pace. And as long we do not reproach them for that taking time, we're fine. Having said that, Matific offers a lot of activities for gaining proficiency in the times table. And
that's what,
yeah,
like we as teachers, how can we make them learn? I mean, making them understand is fine, even with the parents, like but how will we make them learn? I do understand everyone has their own pace of learning, but then they have to learn at a particular age. It's not like they don't know tables when they go to grade 6. So
yeah, I know.
Yes.
Right. So again, you know, like every other thing, it's a lot of exposure, right? So I was saying that Matific has lots of activities precisely aimed at the times table, and you know, all kind of games of skip counting and so on. And something else which is important to say. It's not only time, it's also the kind of experience and exposure. I mean, sometimes there's a certain way of teaching which a child will not, it's not helpful for a child, but another way of looking at it would be helpful. Now, the problem is that, you know, teachers have their practices which are usually aimed at I would say the average or the larger part of the class, and may miss as a result some of the students. So what we do a lot at Matific is offering very different activities for the same skill, because you know, every child will come the moment in which it will click, right? And you never know which way of looking at it will be helpful for a particular child. So as I said, we have probably over 10 activities, very different activities some are more games, some more something you would call serious, quote unquote. And again, you know, what we can do is offer resources and do what we do to create this this learning curve, okay, which they need to grasp. So do I have magic solutions for the timetable? No, I'm not a magician. Do I offer a lot of resources? Or, I mean, we as Matific, the answer is yes.
That's why the question was on, you said you have an enormous number of experiences, so I thought it will be helpful in some way or the other. The basic problem which we teachers do face. And actually, out of 100 students, suppose if 90 are doing, then we have to concentrate on that 10%, make them understand, make them learn. So I was like, okay, fine. So Matific provides us those activities, right?
Yes. I should probably stress 1,500 activities, okay? And you've seen 5 or 6. So imagine now coverage of everything with a lot of different varied content for every subject in your curriculum.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So Santosh, your question. Unmute kariye apne aap.
Yes, very good evening, Gaurav. Thank you with the part of this. Just would like to one question, Professor. Actually, the role of mathematics lab. Actually, in CBSE schools, CBS for the guidelines, we are using the maths lab. But maths lab, the implementation of this lab is not up to the mark. Many teachers are trying to develop the kind of teaching strategies of mathematics itself in the class. But how to to increase the uses of the maths lab? What kind of activities we supposed to implement from lower level to the higher level? Please.
Yes, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the uses of the mathematics lab and how the mathematics lab can be used very innovatively and creatively.
So I'm not sure I know what a mathematics lab is in your context. So maybe tell me, and then I'll be able to answer.
Yeah.
So first you'll have to dissect. So I think that's more of a functional question. Santoshji, we'll give you Professor's email ID. You can talk to him directly for that matter. Okay?
Sure.
Philip, you'll be the last question. We are completely out of time, and then we'll wind up this session. Philip, you'll have to unmute yourself.
True.
Yeah. Go ahead, Philip.
I'm trying to.
You are
okay.
Unmuted.
Good evening. Now. Good evening, Gaurav. Good evening, Professor Raz. Now, I was just watching while you were saying about Matific, the app. There is one app for the student and there's another app for the teacher. Right. You got 2 apps there. Now, is this app, of course, it is very personalized learning for every individual, it will be at their own pace and their own timing. So is this app that you have developed, is it available offline? Do I always have to have an internet connection?
You're talking about the student or the teacher app?
Either one of them. If it's the student.
Okay, I'm sorry. So okay, for the student, I think it was said very clearly that you can run offline. There's an option of downloading all the content ahead of time, and then you just don't need any connectivity. The only component for which you will need eventually connectivity is if you want your achievement to be stored such that the teacher can see what you did and get reports and so on, and the points you earned and so on to be stored. You will need eventually to reconnect to the network, but nothing prevents you to keep doing Matific activities. Now,
thank you.
The teacher app is a different story. What's the goal of the teacher app? Through the app, the teacher can manage the class, assign content to students, and see reports. Okay, so that's a kind of interaction that requires connectivity. From my experience, the connectivity of teachers is much less of an issue. It works on the phone, they are connected and so on. And it also does, it's not also at all in terms of data. Okay, just the cost of data. A teacher app is not, it's not something complicated. The issue of connectivity is for children, and that's why we made sure that we can offer a resource which does not rely in real time on connectivity.
Thank you, Raz. One more question, Raz. The thing is, when we are talking about gamification,
yes,
is there one portal where it's only meant for games, and then you have the serious, the drill exercises, or it's all together built in?
Thank you for this question. I was already referring to that. There's no distinction, and there should not be distinction.
All right.
And again, one of the things I was criticizing is exactly this partition of the serious math and the game, which I think it's artificial and sends a negative message. The fun is the math. Okay, I really mean it, and I'm a mathematician, so you can take me seriously for that. Okay, the fun is the math, and we're trying, again, I was talking about sugarcoating. We're trying not to to bring it to the other edge of being completely I would say, sorry for the word idiotic, but we do serious math in a friendly environment. That's our essence.
Thank you. Thank you, Raz.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your time, and more importantly, thank you, Professor, for your valuable inputs. And I think everyone who was present here did gain some bit of, I think, interesting way of teaching maths. I'm sure they cannot change themselves in 90 minutes for sure. But then having said this, at least they have a thread and they have a direction to work on. So pleasure hosting you with us at IEP in India, and we look forward to host you again. On that note, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and hopefully next time in real life in India.
Oh yes, absolutely. I hope we meet in physical proximities as well, hopefully soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you. Good having you all with us. Take care. Bye-bye.